All right. Hello. Good morning, everybody. I am so happy to be joining you from Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Jessica Siegel. I will be your host for this morning. And happy to be spending some time with Toby Newman, who is coming to us live from the Netherlands. So it is his afternoon. This is my morning. He's going to be talking to us a little bit about deciphering a learning mindset. So I'm just going to quickly turn it over to Toby and let him introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Jessica, and welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night if you're a Jim Carrey fan. So thank you very much for joining. Jessica, thank you very much for starting this. We're going to spend a bit of time just talking about mindsets. But before we do that, a bit about me. I am Toby. Hello. I work in the Netherlands, but I am a born and bred Londoner. You can probably tell from the accent. I've been in L&D for far too long, kind of give or take 20 years or so. I've done all sorts of different training. I was lucky enough to do a TED Talk, which is a very different experience. I would recommend anybody to at least try and get a TED Talk. It's a brilliant experience. But one of the things that I do within my work is, I suppose I could call myself an in-house consultant. And I try, rather than train people, I actually don't like the word training, but I try and educate people and help them to develop themselves. And I haven't invented the learning mindset, but one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of people talk about learning mindsets and learning cultures, but it's not really kind of said, this is how you do it. It's more like people just assume that you know how to do it. So hopefully in the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to give you some, let's call it a crash course on what is a learning mindset, why it's important, and some basic tips on things to think about how to either train it out or ideally develop it yourself. So just to kick things off, normally I'd like to do like little kind of exercise and stuff, but it's a bit kind of different in this exercise. But there's one little thing that I'd like to quickly show you. Now, obviously I can't see anybody, so I'm just going to do this on my own, and people kind of like, I don't know if they're looking in through their windows, will think that I'm a bit weird. But what I'd like everybody to do, just to kind of show you the power of the mind, is do this quick little exercise. So first of all, you need to hold out both of your fists. You need to do one pointing and one thumb up. And now you need to swap. So do that, and do that. And then do it quicker, and then quicker. And then it's hard. It's hard. I keep on messing up. And the whole point of doing something like that is, and again, I'm not a scientist, but basically you've got your left hand and the right hand side of your brain. And these kind of exercises help your brain improve. It's a terrible word, but it helps you to engage. It helps you to work. The other one that I love to do is you kind of hold one hand on your nose, the other one on your ear, and then swap, and then do that. And then do that. It's crazy. If you do that with 200 people, it's fun, guaranteed. But it's an idea of getting your brain, your mind kind of working. And so today we're going to be talking about the mind and about how powerful it is. Mindsets are so powerful in everything we do, be it in the workplace, be it in life, whatever you do, having the right mindset is important. So let me give you two scenarios, or a couple of scenarios, to give you the idea of why mindsets are important and why they are important for the work that we do within L&D. So one of my colleagues recently asked me to deliver some training on Splunk. Now, I'd love to see in the comments if anybody knows what Splunk is. I didn't have a clue. I thought it was some 90s game, because there's Splunkit and Get Splunk and very, very bizarre. So I had to Google it. And what traditionally would have happened is I would have gone off and created some lovely e-learning on all the different areas around Splunk and what it can mean. It's actually to do with search engines and how search engines and algorithms work together. But I could have gone off and spent 2, 3, 4 days creating that. What I did, though, is I turned it around back to the person that was asking me and said, first of all, are you the expert in this company on Splunk? And the second thing is, I want to interview you on Splunk. And they were like, well, why do you want to interview me? So, well, you're the expert. I want to get the understanding of why it's important that people know this topic and that they understand it from an expert. And we kind of discussed it. And so within basically 10 minutes, we had an interview on all the basics of Splunk, what it was, why it was important. And then within probably half an hour, we had a list of all different free YouTube clips, all different aspects of what is Splunk, what are the more technical bits. And we had our training done. And then the idea is that once individuals go on, it's not just you take this training and you will receive all the information. It's here is what Splunk, in this case, here is what Splunk is about. Here is why it's important. And here is some information to get you started. And then we encourage them to start looking on their own. Now, a lot of people will say, but that's easy. You know, we've got thousands of videos out there. We've got YouTube and we've got Google. And so, you know, why do you need training, or why do you need trainers or L&D experts when you've just got all this content? Now, to an extent, that's true. But let me give you an example. I love using analogies, so you got to bear with me here. So let's say I go to the gym. Now, if you kind of see me, I probably need to go to the gym, but you know, in lockdown, not so much. So I go to the gym. The expert or the expert tells me, or the salesperson says, you know, here's all the equipment, here's how much it costs, this is how to use the equipment. Fine, I sign up and I start going. And then next week, I just don't bother anymore. Now, is that my fault, or is that the gym's fault? Now, a lot of people would say it's my fault. I should stick at it. But let me kind of replay that scenario in a slightly different way. So I go to the gym. The salesperson sits me down, not only walks me around the gym and kind of tells me all the lovely equipment, but sits me down and says, you know, so what are my goals? What do I aim to do? What do I want to do in fitness? And then works with me a schedule to say, right, you know, let's break down, rather than just kind of turn up and go. Let's give you some goals, short goals to achieve. Maybe we'll give you a little coach to start off with, and let's help you through that. Now I'm kind of more invested in it, and I understand the importance of the gym. It now fits into my schedule. I'm probably more likely to go. The gym is still there, the equipment is still there, I know how to use it, but because my mindset, or I say that the gym has helped me with my mindset about going to the gym, as well as my physical ability to go to the gym, I'm then more likely to do it. I'm more happy to do it. So if I go back to this Splunk this Splunk technology, then if I've been educated and I'm the user and I've been told not only what Splunk is, you know, the basics, but I've been told why it's important, and I've been invested in to kind of help with my curiosity and my insights into that and my willingness to research and develop myself, then you got the best, at least for me, you got the best of both worlds. So yes, you still need the technology, you still need the platforms, but you need that mindset to go with it. What actually is a mindset? Now I'm going to quote here because my mind is terrible and I can't remember proper quotes. So according to mindset.com, yeah, pretty good website for mindsets. So a mindset are those collection of beliefs and thoughts that make up the mental attitude, inclination, habit, or disposition that predetermines a person's interpretations and responses to events, circumstances, and situations. So that's clear. I think everybody knows that's exactly what a mindset is. So there's no need. But what does that actually mean? I mean, if you told that to somebody, they're like, okay, but how do you actually do it? So I've broken it down into 4 basic points: self-awareness, positivity, curiosity, and sharing. So self-awareness. Now, self-awareness for me is probably one of the most underrated skills there is. it's one of those things, and I'm not talking about meditation and mindfulness, yes, but not like sitting on the rock in the middle of nowhere going for 3 hours. Self-awareness and meditation are more around just understanding what's around you, but more importantly, understanding yourself. If I use that gym analogy again, if I know that, if somebody told me go to the gym, I'm like, okay, I'll go to the gym. But if I was self-aware and I thought, I really need to be healthy, my body is a temple, whatever you want to say it is, then I'm much more likely to go. The self-awareness is the ability to self-analyze yourself consciously and without prejudice, to judge how you work, how you communicate, how you collaborate, and even how you lead so you can improve yourself. Now, I found a quote that I love. Sheryl Sandberg, who's the COO of Facebook, said, "We cannot change what we're not aware of, but once we are aware, we cannot help but change." And I love that quote. And I'd like to think that we're all in that same boat. So I want to do a little exercise just to see how self-aware you are of your surroundings. Now, again, I don't know if you're going to do this, but play along with me. What I want you to do is take 30 seconds. Now, I'm not going to sit here for 30 seconds quietly, but I'm going to assume you're doing this. What I want you to do is look around the room that you're in and notice 3 things that you never noticed before. Now, that could be, I don't know, the dust on the windowsill. It could be the way the light bounces off something. It could be a crack in the ceiling that you never noticed before. For me, I've just noticed it could be that my TV is crooked. I've just noticed that. So it's not level. And being kind of slightly OCD, I'll have to change that later. I won't do that now, don't worry. But it's those little exercises. If you can start to be aware of your surroundings, then you can start to be aware also of yourself. One of the things I tell my employees when we talk about presentation is you've got to be self-aware about what you're doing. You can't just automatically be Steve Jobs. You've got to decide, right, what am I doing? How are my hands moving? What's my body language? What's my voice sound like? And until you know those things, until you know that you always click your fingers or you always kind of do this, you can't change it. So you need to be that self-aware in order to start changing things. So that's the first thing. Positivity. Now, I'm not talking about positivity where like kind of the maybe stereotypical Americans go, we can do it, and cheerleading and yeah, and all that kind of stuff. That's not positivity. Positivity is more about, it's a kind of an extension of being self-aware. And it's an idea to think, if a barrier comes up, it's not to think, well, there's a barrier. Oh, well, I'll just stop. It's to think, well, there's a barrier. Now, what can I do to get around that barrier or get over it? Or is there another way to do it? And it's not thinking, yes, I'm just going to bash through the barrier. It's about, again, using that self-awareness, but kind of stepping back and thinking, how can I, rather than kind of just give in, how can I move things? How can I do things differently to get to my achievement or whatever your goal is without kind of necessarily having to take a step back? So that's positivity. Curiosity, I'm not going to spend too long on curiosity because there are a lot more clever people than me that talk about curiosity. There's a lot of good books, a lot of podcasts, all about curiosity. I think for me, the most basic thing about curiosity is that you have to create an environment that curiosity is embraced. I talk a lot in my work about psychological safety. Psychological safety is about being able to be your true self, trust, openness, transparency, all that kind of stuff. So for me, again, if you want to know about curiosity, there are plenty of books, there are plenty of processes that you can do. But if you want to bring curiosity into your company or for yourself, you've got to create a good, safe environment for your curiosity to flourish. For me, that's kind of my kind of top tip. And the last one is sharing. And for me, this is probably the most important, because the other three, self-awareness, positivity, and curiosity, a lot of people talk about a growth mindset of that's what a growth mindset is. But for me, a growth mindset is very insular. It's very personal. I have a growth mindset. A learning mindset adds sharing, which then becomes a community. One of my very good friends says that they learn the most by talking out loud and by talking with others and just kind of explaining their problem or explaining what they've just learned and feeding off the feedback of others. I'd also gain a lot from that. And I think a lot of people do, but maybe not necessarily consciously. So sharing is important. And it's not just a case of, hey, everybody, here's what I've learned, and off you go. It's about, there's actually kind of an art of sharing. It's about sharing to the right people with the right groups, and maybe breaking down something you've learned, asking the right questions rather than just saying, here's what I learned, is asking people, what do you think about this? Why do you think this is important for a topic that we're talking about? It's to kind of push conversations forward.
There's been some good interactions in the chat. Daniel Goldman about the 5 stages of emotional intelligence and how self-awareness is the first one when you were talking about that.
Yeah. So the first thing is about getting leadership on board with this. And I think probably one of the easiest ways one of the most, let's say, the surefire ways of doing this is to get them to understand or get them to relate to some of these visionaries, Simon Sinek's of this world, and get them to listen to those kind of companies. And not only that, listen to the examples that people like Simon Sinek use to be able to understand why this is important. Because you can't just go into a company and go, right, learning mindset, that's the way we do things. We're not going to train out in the traditional sense anymore. We're going to push a much more learning environment where individuals are self-empowered, and they drive their own learning culture. If you're not set up, or if your leaders are not bought into that, it's an almost not impossible, but it's a very hard environment to do. So it's get your leaders on board, get them to understand why things like self-awareness, meditation, positivity. I mean, positivity, I think, is always important, but why self-awareness is so important, why curiosity is so important, why sharing is so important, and get them to buy into it by maybe kind of doing interviews with them and seeing what their journey is. One of the things that we did within our company is we created an internal podcast where we host different people from around the company. We talk about how they've learned, what they learn, why learning for them is so important. And we interviewed some of the senior leaders, and we asked them about their own journey, about how they got to where they are now. And a lot of them talk about that they were self-empowered. They just didn't sit there and wait for training to come in. So a lot of leaders, to get to where they are, have a learning mindset in place. It's just a lot of the times leaders, when they get to those positions and then they think, oh, I've got objectives and we've got stakeholders and all these kind of things, is that they're kind of forget that kind of part of them and just think, we've got to train this out, we've got to train this out, we've got to train this out. Now, I know we can talk about, well, there are mandatory training that you can't just rely on people to do, but there is a lot of research, that a lot of stuff has gone on to say that even things like mandatory training of like code of conduct or health and safety, there are still ways that you can do that training without throwing it down their faces and say, you must do this training. So that's the first thing. Technology is important. It's not essential, but it's important. Maybe many of you have learning management systems, LMSs, in your company, which doesn't really push that learning mindset. So it may be that you'd look at investing in a LXPs, a learning experience platforms, video platforms that allow people to create their own content and share and just collaborate easily or easier than just here's an LMS, go into that, take that training, take that training, take that training, and then track to see if they've completed it or whatever rubbish they do. So leadership mindset or leadership getting on board, technology investing in. And I suppose it's just a case of living those embodiments. So going back to that example of Splunk, is that pushback is, in some companies can be seen as rude, or some cultures. But for me, it's important that as L&D, we believe in ourselves, we believe that this is the right process, and that we encourage individuals to do it themselves. I mean, to give you an example, I've had people that would come to me and say, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do that. But then when you speak to them and you kind of see what they do, they're like, oh yeah, I've built my own house, or we've redone our whole garage, or they've built the whole patio. And so, well, they obviously didn't have the skills for that. And they usually YouTube it and just find, how do I build a patio? I had to do that. I had no idea. I built my own patio. I have no idea how to do it. But people that in their own lives employ a learning mindset, they don't necessarily do it in their work. So it's about transforming that and keeping that idea and putting it into work, and just forcing is a bit of a weird way, but encouraging individuals to, you don't want to say go and find it yourself, because that's very derogatory, but there is an element to say, well, what have you found? What gaps are there that you found, that where the gaps are to what we can fill? So it's not like, oh, okay, you've got a topic, Splunk, and just think, right, let me build a case on it. It's right, what internal knowledge have we already got? Let's get that out of them. Then we can add the curated content on top of the created content to give an environment that they can develop themselves in. And it's that last thing, is that creating that psychologically safe environment. And there are many things that you can do. One of the things I love to do is create team canvases or team charters or team agreements, whatever you want to call them. There's plenty of YouTube on there. But create one of those. It starts to create a safe environment, which then enables curiosity. And then share. Yeah,
I love that. I did a team activity once that we made a family crest.
Yep.
We had to use but there was a reason behind everything. The colors, the language, the imagery. We all had to agree on it, and it sparked really fascinating discussion. Was the animal that embodied our team, was it a horse, or was it some people kept throwing out why a monkey? What's
Yeah. But it's a great way to get to know people, but then also builds, a safety around that kind of team.
Yeah. So on our internal, we actually had somebody who had graphic design skills make the crest, and then we put it in all our internal agendas and everything. And it
now that's just showing off.
But we were the only team in the organization who had it, so people would be like, "What's up with that?
Why have you got a monkey on your
Why do you have a family crest? We're not that kind of place. We're not that kind of place." So there was some conversation in the chat about the Johari window placement assessment as a self-awareness tester tool. Are you familiar with that one?
I'm not. No. What is that?
I'm not familiar with it either, but I made myself a note, and I'm going to Google that.
There you go. Being
we all become expert researchers. Yeah, exactly. We all become expert researchers.
I saw a question here, kind of practical methods on self-awareness. Yes, there are kind of tests and stuff, but for me, the one thing is, if you go, I'm trying to remember I'll find the website, but there are many kind of lists that you can do that you can help yourself to be self-aware in the moment. So there's like things like it will say each day, how many contacts did you make? What did you do that day? Almost just a list. And what did you do that made you happy and made you sad? And it's almost just a daily exercise, a little habit creation that you just start to think about, did I say hello to everybody that I know? And there are so many different ways of doing it. But for me, it's once you've got that kind of idea that you're being more self-aware, is get feedback. Is start to ask your peers, your relatives, your family, your colleagues, and honest feedback. It's so critical to be like, where can I improve? What am I doing wrong? What, not so wrong, but where can I improve? But you've got to be in that right mindset to receive potentially negative feedback, but see it as a positive way. Again, that kind of positivity side of things.
Yeah, but I think your point of having other voices and kind of spot checking of, how did I come across in the meeting, or I was thinking of planning, and what would this avenue versus that avenue, how would that maybe impact the team or the organization? So I do some internal coaching with Myers-Briggs, and 9 times out of 10, when folks look at their profile and they say that's not accurate, it's either something they haven't accepted about themselves or something they're not aware of. And when they share their profile with a spouse, with a partner, with a close colleague, the person will look at them and go, yeah. So it's I think the notion of, kind of spot checking is a really good one.
So maybe closing thoughts would be, in terms of feedback, a lot of people do self-reflecting and agile methodologies, but they do it on their job, but they don't do it on themselves. So for me, is make sure that you do your own homework on yourself. What have you been doing? What have you noticed? How you can improve? And get leadership, get them on board, get them understanding why the importance of these skills are, that will drive the whole company forwards, and be better suited for the future for me.
Absolutely. Well, that's an awesome note to end on. Thank you, Toby. I know I had some really great takeaways and aha moments this morning. I hope those who joined us did as well. And if you're looking to continue the learning and fun this morning, there is another session on Forget Networking and Embracing Relationships on this track, or Designing Inclusive Training on the other track. Oh, that one's already underway. You can always hop in late. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Toby.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.